This is a big tutorial. We're going to learn how to create this beautiful unicorn sweater. If you have our DIY kit for the unicorn, then you'll have all the tools you need to create this. Now our stencil sizes come in either small or medium. This is quite a large sweater that I'm using here, so we're going to go in with the medium stencil. Now to get our stencil nice and central, you can use a ruler and measure either side. Personally, I like to count the stitches and make sure I've got even stitches on either side of my stencil. And once I'm happy that my stencil is perfectly in the center, you can go in with your fabric marker and trace around your stencil. Now once I remove the stencil, there will be a few areas that we need to top up. So if you follow my lead with this, and I'll show you exactly where we need to do this. So the first area we need to top up is the eyes. So we just need to add 3 little lines, which are going to become our eyelashes. And we need to do this on both sides. Now to make sure that our eyes are nice and central, I like to line it up with the corner of the unicorn horn. And then I like to go over my other markings to make sure they're nice and bold, and it just makes that stitching process a little bit easier. Now you can leave your unicorn like this, or you can add a little inner ear as well. This is optional. I like to add this and put another color in there too. And you can of course make the unicorn horn bigger or smaller. It's entirely up to you and what you prefer. I like the size that comes with the template. It works really well with this design. And once you're happy with your drawing, you are ready to get started. We're going to start with the unicorn's ears. So the first thing you need to do is choose which color you would like to stitch the outer side of the ear. You're going to thread on approximately 1 meter of yarn onto your needle. There's no need for any fancy knots, just leave a small tail at the end of your needle like this. So we're going to bring our needle up from our starting point, making sure to leave a small tail underneath, which we're going to tie off to later. The stitch we're going to be using for pretty much the whole of this unicorn is the chain stitch. Now we do have a much slower, more detailed version of this chain stitch on our YouTube channel if you're finding this a little bit difficult to follow. You're going to bring your needle back down through the chain, bringing it up approximately 1/2 to 1 centimeter in size. You don't want to go too big or it will create more of a baggy stitch, or ultimately you don't want to go too tight, otherwise it's going to pull your garment. And we're just going to continue like this all the way until we get to the top, making sure to follow our fabric markings the whole way. And once we reach the top, we're simply going to anchor that down with a stitch. Now when we flip our garment over, we're going to just simply snip off the end, leaving a small tail, which we're going to tie off to later. And we still have our threaded needle with plenty of yarn. And with this, we're just going to go up and do the other side exactly as we did the first time. And once we reach the top, we're just going to anchor that again down with a stitch. And now when we flip our garment over, you'll see we've got 2 tails at the top and 1 at each bottom. So for the 2 at the top, we're just going to snip off those ends and we're going to tie them together in a triple knot. And for the two loose ends at the bottom, we're just going to tie a knot, and then we're going to thread that yarn back onto our needle. We're then going to weave it through our work so that we can keep this looking nice and neat on the back. Approximately 3 times is enough, and then we can just snip off that end. Make sure to copy it on the other side, which I have done previously, and that's what the back of the ear looks like. I'm now just going to repeat this exact same process on the other side, and we're just going to go ahead and do that now. So now we have both of our outer ears stitched, we're going to look at the inner ear. Now for this section you can change the colour of your yarn. I've put 1/2 metre of baby pink onto this one. We're going to leave a small tail underneath to tie off to later. And again, we're just going to go in with our chain stitch, and we're going to bring that stitch all the way to the top of the ear. And once we get to the very top, we're just going to anchor that down again with a stitch. Now this time, because the area is only very short, we're just going to bring our needle up from the bottom of that inner ear, but remember not to pull too tight. We're then going to carry on our chain stitch and make these two areas meet at the top. And we can just anchor that one down with a stitch. Now when we flip our garment over, you'll see we've got one tail at the bottom and one tail at the top. Now the tail at the top is still threaded to our needle, so we're simply just going to thread our needle through our work until these two tails meet. And once they do, you can simply snip off the excess, and we're just going to tie this in a triple knot. And this is what the back of the inner ear looks like. Now you might want to pause this video and just go ahead and finish your other ear. We've gone ahead and done that just to save a bit of time. Now let's move on to the unicorn horn. Now you can choose whichever colours you like here. I'm going with the light orchid, and I'm going to put 1 metre of this yarn onto my needle. Now a tip here, I like to count the stitches in between each ear to make sure that everything is still nice and central. We're going to bring our needle up from our starting point, again leaving a small tail underneath, and just like our ears, we're going to chain stitch all the way to the top. And then once we get to the top, we're just going to anchor that down with a stitch. And then you're simply just going to go ahead and repeat this process on the other side. And then again, once at the top, we're just going to anchor that down with a stitch. And then when we turn our garment over, you'll see we've now got 2 tails together at the top and again 2 at the bottom. So we're just going to snip off those threads, tie the top ones into a triple knot. And don't worry too much about the bottom 2, we're going to come back to those later. The next section we're going to look at is filling in the unicorn horn in our colours. So whichever colours you've added to your kit, I personally like to do 3 alternating colours, but it's entirely up to you. You can do 1 bold colour or you can do lots of different colours. For this one, I'm going to thread on approximately 1/4 metre of baby pink yarn, and we're simply just going to do a chain stitch across. Now once we get to the end, we're just going to anchor that one down with a stitch. And when we flip our garment over, you'll see now we've got 2 tails on either side, which is from our unicorn outline and also our baby pink. We're just going to simply triple knot them together. Next, we're going to go in with another colour. So I've threaded on some turquoise here, just another 1/4 metre of yarn. And we're just going to go in and again, following the guideline from the baby pink, we're just going to do another line across. And when we get to the end of this one, we're just going to anchor that one down and we're just going to snip off the end. However, we're just going to leave that one for now. The idea here is every time you do 2 rows, you can tie off. So you've got 2 pieces of thread to tie together. So as we only have 1, we're just going to leave that until we do our next row. So I've now just jumped ahead and done another row of baby pink. I'm now going to triple knot these 2 tails together. And we're simply just going to continue like this all the way until we get to the top, and every second row you're going to triple knot them together. So you will have quite a lot of knots at the end of this. However, this is probably the easiest way that's beginner friendly on how to tie off all these ends. So when you get to the very top of the unicorn horn, you may have just 1 thread left with nothing else to tie it to. In this case, you can just put a little knot in it and tuck the threads underneath all of your work. Next, we're going to thread on approximately 1/2 metre of black yarn, and we're just going to follow the exact same process this time for our eyes. So we're going to chain stitch all along our fabric markings. And I've jumped ahead here so we can save a bit of time. And to do the corner flick of the eye, we're going to do a chain stitch for this. So it's going to be approximately 2 or 3 chains depending on how dramatic you want your eyes to look. So here I'm just going to be putting 2 chains in. And then I'm just going to anchor that down. And I'm going to bring my needle up to my next eyelash. And this is just a simple straight stitch here. So we're going to bring our needle up and we're just going to tuck it into the eye. And we're going to do this again for the 3rd eyelash. And then we're just going to flip our garment over, and we're simply going to take our threaded needle and take it back through our work until the starting tail and your end tail meet. And then of course, as usual, we're going to tie that into a triple knot and just snip off any excess ends. And then of course, we're going to repeat the exact same process on the other side. So now your unicorn's looking really super sweet. We're going to add a few flowers into this to make a sort of a flower crown. Now this is pretty much creative freedom. You can add whatever you want into this section. For me, I like to add a cluster of 3 roses, but you could add daisies or roses. It's entirely up to you. We do have a tutorial that specifically shows you how to stitch both of these flowers, which you might find a little bit better. They are much more slowed down. For this video, I'm just going to go ahead and stitch in our roses now. Now once you've added all your flowers and your greenery, which we also have a tutorial for, you're just going to get a damp paper towel and dab away your fabric markings. Once you're happy that it's all complete, you just flat lay to dry and you are done. I really hope you found this tutorial useful, and thank you so much for purchasing our DIY kits. Happy stitching, guys!